stand by relays, stand by Canberra, Perth and Launceston. Come in relays, come in relays. This is Michael Williamson at the MCG in Melbourne, welcoming you to the 1971 Grand Final, St Kilda versus Hawthorn.
It's one of the toughest games that I've ever had any connection with.
It just gets me. I don't know why, but I get emotional about it.
The teams, both of them, had 7 or 8 of the toughest players in the toughest period of AFL history.
There was no quarter given and none asked. It was very physical.
Well, I don't know what you football purists want. I reckon this is exciting as you'd ever find anything.
I would go so far as to say I had severe concussion.
There's no doubt in my mind it was the toughest game I'd been in.
Get the opportunity to play in a grand final taken from me. Yeah, I was pretty emotional.
Fortunately, at the last minute I saw him, because if I didn't see him, I'd still be lying there, I reckon.
They were just instinctive, spur of the moment things that you'd say, I wish I could have that time back.
Whoa, over they go as Big Carl come through.
My eyes reduced to tears, and it's not often that I cry.
It was quite worrying. I thought, well, here we go. Your worst nightmare, I suppose.
We're not going to lose. We're going to win.
The serene atmosphere during the morning of Saturday, September 25th in the city of Melbourne belies the simmering excitement felt not only in the progressive city itself, but throughout the whole of the state of Victoria and beyond. It's a day apart, Grand Final Day.
I look at the players today and I don't know whether they get as much enjoyment out of playing the game as we did.
It was a game of pleasure, you know, it was just a Saturday afternoon.
What we had to do was go to work 9 to 5 and then go to training.
The money didn't certainly keep you in the game back in those days. It was the joy and the love of playing footy and the fact that you're playing at the highest level.
And I think society was, you never had the pressures. You go to a hotel and have a beer and celebrate occasionally in those sort of arenas, and no one ever worried you.
That's the other difference with today's football, is the hype. Any player just sneezes, it's news now.
I was so grateful that we didn't have mobile phones with cameras in those days, because I think there would have been quite a lot of my teammates would have either been dead or in jail.
Flares were all the go, bell bottoms. It was just starting off to be the jean era.
I owned a couple of pair of flares. They even had the platform shoes.
Yeah, Scotty, he was the fashion plate. None of us even attempted to equal him. But at the same time, not many of us wanted to equal him. We weren't prepared to come out in a safari suit or the caftans.
He brought a little bag once when little bags weren't the thing among football fraternity. I must have looked at it and didn't say anything, but the look must have been enough for him, because he gave me an answer in no uncertain terms.
There'd be the Carls and the Barry Breens would be leading the fashion in those days. Breeny probably, he might have been the first time that he used a hairdryer.
It was an ugly time when you look back.
Hawthorn and St Kilda are due to take the field to battle for the 1971 VFL flag.
We didn't have the cavalcade in those days, but the build-up was still pretty heavy. I mean, television, cameras at training, all that sort of build-up was out of the ordinary. It was all shaping up to be a pretty big weekend.
It's springtime, it's September, you're playing in finals, there was a spring in your step. It was exciting.
This is the first time the teams have met in a grand final, although each one has won the flag once previously. Hawthorn in 1961 and St Kilda in 66. St Kilda had a tough match against Richmond, whom they defeated by 30 points in the preliminary final. Hawthorn have had time to recuperate from their semi-final encounter against the Saints 2 weeks ago.
Over 118,000 people crammed in. That was a big crowd. It was like being sucked into a vortex when you ran onto the ground. The roar was just amazing. because they were so passionate.
I reckon I could have run the first lap. You'd taken my boots off, there wouldn't have been any grass on it, because I reckon you were about 4 inches above the ground. The atmosphere was just unbelievable.
It was something I'll probably, echo in my mind for the rest of my days.
Versus Hawthorn. The umpire is Peter Shields. David Parkin of Hawthorn won the toss, and the Hawks are kicking down to the Richmond end.
We certainly thought that we were as good as them, and we knew that we were going to take it up to them.
The pressure is really intense, really intense.
We were confident that we could win the game. We knew that we had to put it to Hawthorn.
None of those who played in Hawthorn's premiership side are in today's team, but John Kennedy, who coached them for the 61 season, is still in control.
We knew it'd be a last man standing affair. Nobody expected anything different.
It was just a bite and scratch. Like, they were really, really tough encounters, those games, always.
But the Hawthorn-St Kilda rivalry over that 5 or 6 year period was second to none. It was absolutely brutal.
Game and his second grand final, Peter Shields is field umpire. Hawthorn wins the hit-out. Colling intercepts, but grand final nerves affect both sides and neither take advantage of early opportunities.
You didn't have time to get a kick, you're under pressure the whole time.
It bounces off the lead. Whoa! And over they go as Big Carl comes through.
Keep your eye on the ball, run straight lines and take whatever's coming type of thing.
This is pretty football, but look at that. How'd you like to be the meat and the sandwich? Plenty of opposition now. Whoa! It's getting it tough. Green comes in, almost unloaded by Hudson.
You got whacked, you got up and kept playing. You didn't think about it.
Most of us, when we got concussed, we came back on and played a lot better because we were free of all the restrictions that fears have.
Oh, what a shot! And down went Trump. Oh, there he is, and the players coming in here. Alan Jean's not too happy about the treatment.
They were just instinctive, spur of the moment things that you'd say, I wish I could have that time back, but you can't.
It's Heath. Did you see what happened? Frank Adams.
Kevin Heath was taken out by Carl Dittrich on a wing. A few of us went out and tried to do something there because I didn't think that was warranted.
I think a lot of people my age in particular, just loved that, the fierce and ferocity of the game.
No, there's no doubt in my mind it was the toughest game I've been in.
Toughest game of football I can remember.
So difficult. I think it's going to be one of those close, hard, tense, exciting struggles all day with every goal important.
Just got to get on with the game and get up, and they'll keep.
His ear was sort of cut in two, hanging off, and I'd broken a couple of bones in the hand.
I would go so far as to say I had severe concussion.
Of all players, the Hawks' full forward Peter Hudson carries the highest hopes. He's kicked 147 goals during the season and is only 3 short of Bob Pratt's record established in 1934.
150 was a real thing, like it was a living thing, because in that year I'd averaged close to 7 goals a game, so 3 or 4 wasn't out of the question.
Peter Hudson, 4 goals to go to break the record, but more important, kicking Hawthorn towards a premiership. The kick's on its way. It's a beautiful kick. He's put it through. He's put it through.
I started at fullback on Hudson. He was just a machine when it came to kicking the ball.
Nobody in the history of the game that I know could do the things that Peter Hudson did.
A one-handed mark, and Hudson has his big chance of closing on Pratt's record.
We always used to concede Hudson 5 or 6 goals. I mean, that was just a given.
But a few of us had heard that $500 was up for grabs for a St Kilda player to take Hutto out before half-time.
A build-up for a normal grand final is enough without that on top of your head as well.
Said to the players at the time, we got to concede that he's going to kick 3 or 4 goals and not to over-concentrate just on Hudson and stop him from breaking the record.
Voice from the back of the room said you can't kick goals if you're unconscious. And that was me.
Brought a great deal of mirth into the whole room and all that, not knowing what was going to happen when the game started.
He was always a good comic, could always tell a good yarn and was never backward in coming forward.
Elliott kicks defensively, and Neil flies high to take a good defensive mark in front of Heath, just outside the goal square.
There was no plan. I didn't go home that night and say I'm going to go out tomorrow and punch Hutto's head in. That just wasn't on the plan. It was just something said off the cuff.
We didn't pay a lot of attention to it because we had no control over it. But then in the first quarter,
the ball knocked away. Looks like Murray's in a bit of trouble. They go through. Hudson's bowled over, and Hudson's hurt. Hudson's hurt.
Didn't really know what had happened. There'd been a collision. Hutto had gone down.
He just grabbed hold of the ball, and I just, in the split second, I thought, this is it, bang, and I let him have a whack in the ear on.
The crowd just went crazy. It was a huge moment.
I would go so far as to say I had severe concussion.
His ear was sort of cut in two, hanging off, and I'd broken a couple of bones in my hand, so it was a reasonable whack.
He was groggy, but Peter always sort of looked groggy. He did. You know, he got up and slowly and, well, that's just Peter.
Looks a bit groggy on the Racing.
He goes, Mike, but even when he's fully fit, he always looks a bit sluggish and slack. I wouldn't be fooled one bit by this. He's a pretty big...
That's got to give us a good chance of winning now.
Kanga had a saying that no point lying on the ground, and that what's wrong with you? You've got to stand up.
One of those ones above the neckline, and didn't really matter up here, provided you could keep going and pointing the right way. We'll turn you around at quarter time.
Obviously, to see a champion full forward in a bit of trouble, you're probably thinking, oh, gee, I hope he's all right, and you can see the game out.
It did, stagger Hudson for a while, but he came back into the game.
But I can remember looking up at the scoreboard, and I could see, say it was 2-2, I could see 2-2, but I couldn't see 14. But if I sort of shut my eyes and looked, I could see 14, but I couldn't see 2-2. It was the weirdest feeling.
I think his words were he saw 3 goalposts, which means it would have been hard to kick through them.
One bit by this, he's a pretty big frame.
I tell you what, his legs don't look too hot.
No worries, I bet he puts it through, Mike.
I knew I was on the ground, I knew I was in a grand final, and I didn't want to go off.
Ever since when I've looked back on it, I just feel probably a little guilty. I can't believe that he's always just been so good to me. I don't know whether I'd have been able to talk to him if he'd have done the same thing to me. That night I had those most shocking headaches, and it took me a long time to get over it.
He's kicked one, Peter Hudson. Comes now, he's a bit steadier coming up the kick. Got that one the hard way, he kicks off.
At least for him, there was a lot of pressure on him to, break that record, and, he muffed those easy shots.
If he missed, well, there was something wrong with the goalposts because he was so accurate.
Hudson has his big chance of closing on Pratt's record. But in uncharacteristic fashion, he kicks right across the face of the goal. Could be he's feeling the effects of that early knock.
Concussed or not concussed, while he was out there getting a kick, it meant that the others had to worry about him.
John's game plan was pretty simple, get the ball, start a brawl, kick it to Peter Hudson.
I idolised John Kennedy as a person, as a coach, what he stood for, his ideals.
He was uncompromising. Famous sayings like, there's no sentiment in football. Injuries above the neckline don't count.
You didn't have one-on-one conversations really with John. I mean, if the coach yelled at you, you didn't take it personally because he yelled at everybody.
He was no doubt a father figure.
He was like a god, so still is.
Moore now. Moore knocks the ball away. Theodore comes in for St Kilda. In comes Parkin of Hawthorn. Hayes is there for St Kilda. In comes Stevenson of Hawthorn. My golly, it's like calling a horse race. They're coming from all directions.
You knew what was coming and you copped it and you stood up and played. That's what Kennedy's sides did. And there's no doubt that Alan Jeans had exactly the same philosophy.
About the same there. We both realised we're up against it's not going to be an easy game or anything like that.
He made him put the head over the ball and chase and tackle and do all the difficult things. And, we coached along similar lines.
All players going
gloriously at the moment. A wonderful example of 36 players' courage.
Jeansy is one of the best coaches going around.
He taught me a lot, both about footy and life.
There were very few people, you know, you could say were as passionate about winning.
He could give people a spray, sit back and say, geez, I think he means that.
He's the man probably I admire most in footy.
Don't make it too complicated. They're not Rhodes scholars. The good Lord's crooked on coaches, and he gives so many dumb buggers so much ability.
Moving gamely after his knock, Murray's precision pass gives Manzi a golden opportunity. He miskicks, the ball flying out of bounds. Hudson balks his way into the clear. His kick from 45 yards out is right on line, and he's now just one short of the coveted record.
Of the first quarter of the 1971 Grand Final, Hawthorn 2-2-14, St Kilda 2-1-13.
Biggest disappointment of my whole footy career.
The opposition didn't know what he was going to do because Carl didn't know what he was going to do.
It reduced us both to the same level.
Rugged defence was a feature of a hard-played opening period in which the backs were better suited than forwards. There are no Hawthorn replacements for the second quarter, and the same applies to the Saints.
Dickens comes out with the ball, a right foot kick in the goal. What is it? Free kick, Hawthorn's way. There he is, Big Carl.
He was the guy that often set us going. He was so mobile, so aggressive.
Kicks it down towards Big Carl. Carl plays on around the wing. Swings the ball in towards centre-half forward where Johnny Bonnie.
He was probably the first of the athletic type of players.
The opposition didn't know what he was going to do because Carl didn't know what he was going to do.
It was going to be great that Carl had another opportunity to play in a grand final because he was disappointed that he missed out in 66 through suspension.
Really felt guilty of the fact getting reported and letting down the whole the St Kilda Football Club, the side, the supporters, everything.
I think this was Carl's opportunity to get one back.
He was probably the man that we would have all loved to have won it for.
Halfback point for St Kilda on the member stand side. Will that mark be paid? He's paying it. Paying it to Scott, but you'll play to Jeff Crouch.
Of course I would.
Alan Jeans wouldn't have.
Jeans up his seat. Wasn't Mark. Oh, it was, Ron. Oh, come on.
71 was just going to be a fantastic year for me. Of course, I line up in the second semi-final against St Kilda and hurt my knee.
Oh, and here's a play to Hawthorn. It's Peter Knights, is it? Gee, he looks to be in real trouble. Oh, golly, if they lose him, they're in awful strife.
And consequently missed the grand final.
You had to feel for him because he was still only a kid. You know, he was only a boy.
Knights has been carried off. Oh, he's in pain too, the kid. What bad luck. What bad luck.
There was empathy from most people, I think, that Pete had missed out on the last hurdle, basically.
Well, it's a tremendous blow to their premiership hopes at this stage, right?
Yeah, I was pretty emotional. You know, I was really upset. And it was really, really tough to be there and supporting everyone. It just didn't come natural at that stage.
We could have really dropped their bundle over Knightsy, but we were conditioned not to do that.
I suspect that he still feels very hollow about not playing in that game.
Biggest disappointment of my whole footy career, my whole footy life.
We'll be having a bit of a giggle about Melbourne's weather. The rain is simply pouring down, absolutely pouring down. The ball is in the centre of the MCG.
We thought the conditions at the MCG were terrific, actually. Didn't matter how wet it was. It was better than Moorabbin and Glenferrie Oval.
Players are losing their footing on the now extremely slippery surface.
It reduced us both to the same level.
The style of footy was get it and kick it as long as you could, whether it was 12 feet or whatever.
There was no easy possession to be got in there.
We weren't too worried about what it looked like.
A heavy encounter between Murray and Heath, and the Saints vice-captain is limping badly.
Looks like Murray's in a bit of trouble. They go through.
I only really lasted a quarter of an hour in the game because I had a head-on with Kevin Heath, knocked my shin back, tore the cruciate ligament. I was sort of hobbling from then on.
There's Bob Murray. Adrian Wright, the physio, talking to him, and Bob said, I'm not coming off, I'm all right.
Bob was a significantly important player in our team.
Earlier in this game, Bob Murray looked as though he would go off the ground with a bad knee injury. He's been transferred down to the forward pocket. In comes Murray. Hinbeck on the mark. Murray is offline. What do you think of Bob Murray down there, Ron?
I think it's ridiculous.
In those days, they didn't have interchange, so you only had 2 reserves. You didn't have the luxury of somebody going off and coming back on the ground.
Bob Murray's coming off, and Stephen Ray is coming on. Murray's coming off.
Losing Bob Murray was also a blow for us. When you lose a player of the calibre of Bob, your structure changes.
Well, I just think it unsettled the side. We lost flexibility.
Here's Bob Murray. What a wonderful player. What bad luck for him.
To get an injury and so early in the game, it's really disappointing, and you think, why?
Minot gets it over the back. It goes towards Bremner. He can't handle it though, and Ross Smith whips in. Kicks it down towards Don Scott, and Scott takes a good chest mark.
I played that game with concussion because I was run through by John Bonney in the second semi-final, but you don't tell people that you got those things because you want to play in a grand final. But yes, didn't want to get hit in the head again.
CG, the excitement is high here. Tempers are frayed everywhere.
No one likes getting hurt and all the rest of it, but didn't matter because you just wanted to win. And
you've got to get used to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Just got to play, and there's no excuses.
Ron Barassi, it's a battle of the defences. Can you see how either coach can get that ball further forward?
Not really, Mike, because it's so close and it's so hard.
Green is paid a free. A faultless 40-yard punt kick brings up Saints' 4th goal.
Theodore now tries a hand pass, taken by Nancy. Nancy snaps and put it through. Back to 2 points of difference. No, I would not be one bit surprised if we were back here next week. I'm telling you.
I knew we were good enough to beat St Kilda. We weren't there to make up the numbers.
Grabbing the ball, he's pushed in the back by Pays and is awarded a free. This is Hudson's chance to kick his way into football history.
149 goals up. He is 20 yards out on a slight angle. He kicks. 150. This is third.
Equalling Bob Pratt's record at the present moment with 150 goals up.
But keenly anticipating, Scott turns the Saints back. The rain-affected conditions contribute to handling difficulties, and neither side is able to settle into a constructive pattern.
There wasn't anybody that looked like they were going to break the game open.
The first half of the 1971 grand final was played without the ball.
I don't know whether we're going to be able to do it against this mob.
It's a cakewalk from here.
Your worst nightmare, I suppose.
St Kilda hold their 2 points advantage. 4 goals, 6, 30 points, to 4 goals, 4, 28 points.
At half-time, Kanga was giving his splurge, and I don't remember what he said. And I was looking across the room at Mick Porter. Mick and I had 3 possessions between us. He had 2, I think. We both thought at that stage that one of us was gone.
It was a toss-up who was coming off at half-time because they hadn't contributed at all.
Wide to the half-forward flank, and Robert Day.
Because there were blokes being hit all over the ground. Like Robert Day had been knocked out, I'd been knocked out.
We didn't know that Robbie Day had been knocked out in the second quarter. And then the message came out that he thought it was Sunday. Mick Porter and I looked at each other, and it was an enormous sigh of relief because it meant that we both had to go back on.
20th men on now. Wilson came on after half-time, replacing, I believe, Robert Day. So Hawthorn have their 19th and 20th men on. Beck.
Yes, it looked grim. I don't know whether we're going to be able to do it against this mob.
Points up. John Bonney puts it on its way. It's close. It's through.
Punched down by Davis. Bonney comes in. He's hit very heavily. It's a free kick to Bonney. Bonney coming in. It's straight through the middle.
Third quarter, they just came out and blitzed us.
Up they fly. Green takes the mark. That's ball play on by the umpire. He recovers quicker than any Hawthorn player and comes around and drives it towards goal. It's the goal.
I believe that Breen was a real underrated player who could turn a game, and he certainly did when he swung around the big semicircle on the right foot.
If you do that today, I mean, you'd be running to the boundary line and waving your arms.
Very agile and tall. He was a focal point of our attack.
Well tackled over to Smith, however. Smith from the pocket kicks. Don't tell me. He's put it through.
Hawthorn, I think they're struggling, Mike. They can't seem to have a player to lift their side at all.
It was quite worrying. I thought, well, here we go. We've come all this way. Your worst nightmare, I suppose.
You certainly don't have any sense of we're gone, but certainly the sense of we're in trouble.
And in the third quarter, they got a roll on, and gee, here we are, best side for the year. There's a chance we're going to lose this.
I always look worried. I suppose it's a natural disposition to be worried, and particularly that day, the way the game was slipping, ebbing away from us.
I feel that Hawthorn are paying a bit the past 10 minutes. They've given away some silly free kicks. They've gone head-hunting, and they're paying the penalty.
We have got a very good chance here.
And we're in with a real chance of having a win.
Gee, I tell you what, there are 36 real gutsy players out there. And speaking of guts, look at this fellow, Ross Smith. Back to the...
Ross Smith was an inspirational captain, super courageous. Like he'd put his body in where, you know, angels fear to tread.
Just one of the most fair income honest players of all time. His heart was for the ball, his eyes were on the ball. He never flinched.
Yes, there's some heavy body contacts. Rovers Smith and Matthews clashing in midair.
Like, you can't get a more important game than a grand final. If you are not prepared to put your body on the line, then you won't do it in any other games.
Hit Smith very hard.
Smithy was a bloke that inspired you all the time, so was the big fella Dittrich. It was always nice to be on his side.
Up goes Dittrich, tries to take it from behind. A struggle. Dittrich is still going. Look at that fella work.
He was just a big man of the time, so with great athletic ability, so he had a fair bit going for him.
One of the features in the second half is Dittrich's improved form, just the same as in the second.
Third quarter was the best quarter of football that I'd seen a ruckman play in a grand final. He just took the game by the scruff of the neck, and that really put us in the position that we could win the game.
And a couple of blokes, one skinny bloke called Ray Wilson and another pretty tough bloke called Michael Porter, both rose to the occasion.
I'll tell you what, if Dittrich has a whack at somebody in a minute, he's quite entitled to.
Not often anyone would say that. But I think in Mike's defence that he was a, you know, sneaky St Kilda supporter, actually.
That Hawthorn were hunting or looking too much for Dittrich.
Well, he's a man that inspires his teammates, Mike, and he's certainly one to try and keep down, but not by the methods that they're using it, I think.
They were concentrating on me, more the better, because I think that was one of the things that they probably went a bit that way.
It was just one of those things in the game that had a major influence. From being so dominant in that third quarter, he went out of the game.
The Saints are everywhere as Hawthorn scramble in an attempt to go forward, but they're disjointed and unable to match the ever-persistent Trott on the flank. He's playing a great game.
Lee Matthews nearly killed Stewie Trott.
It might have been a flying elbow, I think, with Trotty.
His hand pass is intercepted by Trott, who's floored by Matthews. The little winger is out and in need of attention. Should all not be right with him, it would be a severe blow to the Saints.
You do things on the spur of the moment, and some of the things you did on the spur of the moment are outside the rules.
Can't bring it down. Down on the ground it comes. Matthews diving on top of it. Dittrich hanging onto him and giving away the free kick. Matthews and Hawthorn flashing our place on quickly.
I know it's happened a few times with me with umpires, you know, you get a whack and you'd whack back and then the umpire would say, righto, you're square now, give it a rest.
Certainly a badly needed goal by the Hawthorn side. And the siren goes ending the third quarter of the 1971 Grand Final with the scoreboard reading Hawthorn 5-7-37, St Kilda 8-9-57.
It was just sheer rugged determination that had put St Kilda in front, and their skill, of course.
I mean, if they had have got another one, well, you know, who knows, because it wasn't a game where goals were easy to get.
But Ron, it would be very dangerous for St Kilda to become complacent.
I think we might have, you know, got a little bit overconfident and thought, well, you know, it's a cakewalk from here.
Is this going to be the one game that you lose?
For me, I interpret that as conceding that we'd lost.
Gobsmacked, because he hadn't touched the ball all day.
Considered physically stronger than the Saints, Hawthorn will need all their strength to overcome the deficit.
Three-quarter time, the writing was, I thought, pretty clearly on the wall. I was captain of the team, but I had a sense and feel that we weren't good enough.
And I wasn't in a very good frame of mind. I was pretty desperate. I was thinking to myself, well, we're the best team in the comp this year, and are we going to lose the one that matters?
And he just said something to the effect that, you know, there's 100,000 people here. Don't embarrass yourselves by going down further.
If we're going to go down, we're going to go down gloriously.
Is this going to be the one game that you lose?
I couldn't believe that your coach would say that at three-quarter time in such an important game. That, you know, more or less, to me, I interpret that as conceding that we'd lost. I just couldn't work that one out.
Scotty, the vice captain, got the group together just after Kennedy had spoken to them at three-quarter time and said, what's he talking about making this a contest in this last quarter? We're going to more than make it a contest. We're going to win this game.
We had 30 minutes to change something around and we might never be there again, so let's have a go.
And said, what's he talking about losing it? We're going to win this, and I'm going to start the thing from the first bounce.
Ron Barassi, would you bring Hudson out to centre half forward?
No, I wouldn't, Mike.
Well, it's just as well he didn't say it to me, because I would have been influenced by Ron.
Bob Kenny opened up in the goal square and Peter Hudson out in the centre half forward position, which may not mean a thing, of course.
I just said to Bob Kenny, look, Bob, you've been mucking about there. Go down and potter around down at full forward. Let's get you down there out of it for a while.
Hutto, you've been scratching around down there at full forward all game. Get up to half forward and try and get a kick. And Kenny, you haven't had a kick all day. Get down to full forward and see if you can kick a goal.
And immediately, you know, my heart started to beat because he knew that I always loved playing full forward.
Taken by Lawrence, can't get his kick. Picked up by Martello. He's been manhandled. Taken by Kenny. Put it through. Look at John Kennedy.
We needed goals. The ball was coming in so often that somebody had to convert.
Martello, a long kick down forward. A battle ball. Played it to Kenny.
How do you explain it? I mean, he's beaten hands down for three quarters.
Gobsmacked, because he hadn't touched the ball all day.
I love the story about the church in Hawthorn, with the minister of the day writing, what would you do if Jesus Christ came to Hawthorn? And somebody wrote underneath it, move Peter Hudson to centre half forward.
Bob Kenny might have thought himself the Almighty.
I might have had to be the stand-in, but Jesus Christ wasn't there.
They said he's a coaching genius, and it was pure exasperation.
20 points the difference. Matthews always a long way out. It's a big kick. Don't tell me he's put it through.
He got on one of those big torpedoes at the time, and it lifted my spirits.
Lee started to come into the game, their midfield started to come into the game.
He was strong, tough, and, you know, one of the greatest players of all time. You know, you don't become a legend, you know, if you don't deserve it.
Lee Matthews, along with Polly Farmer, they're the two best footballers I've ever seen in my life.
Never far away from the thick of play, Crimmins flashes onto the scene and in a blistering individual burst, scores on the run.
Hawthorn have kicked 3 goals in 3 minutes.
That was inspiring, like the bench reacted.
Crimo was an inspiring player, and you could just see him with the hair flowing and put it through, and he's terribly talented.
Peter Hudson was the star forward, kicking 150 goals, unbelievable. But I think you think a little bit of Peter Crimmins in a way as the real life and heart of the footy team.
Hudson plays on and drives the ball down towards the goal square. There's Kenny behind Colling. It's good mark.
1 point and scores are level.
We were 27 points in front. Within a flash, we were all square.
How momentum shifts in a game, it's very interesting. It's unexplainable.
12 yards out, directly in front. He kicks. Hawthorn are in front. Hawthorn are in front.
Well, Mike, it looks as though this move of Kennedy's to put Bob Kenny up in the goal square, in the goal front, is a winning move so far.
Gee, I think it only took us about 10 minutes and we're back in front.
We're starting to worry a little bit then. How can we, what do we do to control it? And there was just too many of them bobbing up.
Hawthorn have come from the depths of despair.
Hawthorn lifted a notch and showed their class.
Steamrolled St Kilda. It was just like a wave coming down the ground.
Don Scott, who had an absolute will to win at all costs.
David Parkin, and Parkin does a drop kick straight towards Don Scott. It whips it over towards Kenny. Kenny's going towards the goal. Might make it. Might make the goal. Look at John Kennedy there. You can see the joy on Kennedy's face.
It's great to see Kennedy do a Highland fling there on the sideline. He jumped about 10 feet in the air.
Scott just took over in the last quarter and he was a dominant force.
Alan Jeans, grimace, the anguish, the pain on his face. How can the Saints get out of it? Kenny's in there. Kenny picks up, he screws around, he snaps. I tell you.
A hand pass to Hudson. Slamming the ball through the centre, Hudson is elated, thinking he's broken Pat's record. So does everyone else, excepting umpire Shields, who correctly disallows the goal.
I had about 4 shots a goal to break the record.
Oh, he's no more than 8 yards out. He should kick it. Up he comes. He kicks off. He ran into the man on the mark.
I can't ever remember kicking into the man on the mark except that day when I kicked into Barry Long.
Matthews a hand pass to Hudson. Hudson going for a run. He steadies. He kicks. Oh my God, he's missed it.
In a nightmare you wouldn't put down a strip like that from Hudson.
I don't think that he's destined to break that record somehow.
I don't belt myself up over that because I know I had concussion.
Probably a little guilty, or I just think he should have been able to sort of probably break the record.
When he missed it, Peter was down on his hands and knees with his head in his hands, and Ray Wilson came by him and said, "Come on, get up." The game was still alive in terms of winning or losing.
As sit here, up he goes. Brink comes out with the ball. Brink into an open goal. Yes. This is not all over yet.
The last quarter seemed to go on and on. I keep looking at the clock. I think it went nearly 34 minutes. I never thought it was going to end.
The sun comes out as the ball hits the ground and Heath sends it back to the wing position. Siren goes. Siren goes. Hawthorn are premiers 1971. Hawthorn are premiers, and the final scoreboard here reads Hawthorn 12-10-82, St Kilda 11-9-75.
Pure elation to get over the line. Didn't really know what to do.
Now, whether it was lack of fitness or playing the previous week taking too much out of us, I don't know which it was, but Hawthorn got the points on the day.
It just gets me. I don't know why, but I get emotional about it.
Sympathy for St Kilda? No, none at all.
Oh, it's reduced to tears. And it's not often that I cry.
There's full time and Hawthorn's second VFL flag. And John Kennedy has completed the double.
It was a great fighting effort from the players. So geared up for the contest that day that that's all that mattered, really.
You would have seen the jubilation on the faces of the Hawthorn players as they were hugging and kissing, actually, John Kennedy.
Philosophical about not breaking the goal-kicking record, Hudson acknowledges the leadership of David Parkin.
I dropped and smashed the cup, so I'm remembered most for the captain who did that.
That was running down amongst the crowd, then he dropped it and just about wrecked it.
The sound in the change room after the game was deafening. I couldn't hear myself speak.
The emotion just drains from you. There's a real emotional letdown. It's just indescribable.
From then on, it gets a bit hazy because we enjoyed ourselves for a good week.
I actually likened losing a grand final to losing someone close to you, someone close to you dying. It's just that same sort of feeling. And over time you get used to it, but you never really forget how you felt.
They gave it their best and all that, and it didn't come our way. You just got to get them through, and their families, everybody suffers.
try and find a hole to fall in. It's just gut-wrenching.
It's after the game that you think that's when the emotion comes out. Even 40 years later, it comes out. And because they are so hard to win. And for St Kilda, they are doubly hard to win. Doubly hard to win.
Obviously, you know, tremendously devastated that we'd let it just slip through our fingers like sand.
It would have been fantastic to have Carl in either 66 or 71 as a fellow premiership player. And yeah, I do feel for him.
I was reduced to tears. And it's not often that I cry. It has haunted me, you know, really. Grand finals are what it's all about, you know. It'd be lovely to go and reminisce for the boys and to have in the back of the mind, you know, played in 2 winning grand finals.
The St Kilda boys, well, they fought the game right out, but it was all Hawthorn in the final turn.
Probably feel a bit sorry for guys that probably go through their careers and don't achieve the success that we had.
Did I have sympathy for St Kilda? No, none at all, because they were just a team. I've been in that situation of being beaten. It's a horrible feeling, but no sympathy at all.
I lost 5 grand finals and I got beaten in the ruck every time.
The loneliest spot in the world is if you're coach of the losing grand final side in front of 100,000 people, and it's very lonely. Nobody wants to know you, and you can see your football grave in their eyes.
I went to Bob Pratt's funeral, and when I was at the funeral, that was the time when I thought more than any other time that, gee, I'm glad I didn't break that record.
If we won a grand final, you wake up Sunday morning and you think, oh, that was yesterday. The moment, it's like a fresh feel-good pill, but it only lasts for a little while.
And how lucky you are to be able to say you've played in at least a grand final, and regardless of whether you win or not, I think you get a special bond and a friendship out of that.
Every now and again we see one another. Well, we don't talk about the 71 grand final that much, but we talk about the times we had, and we were great mates. And to have a good side, you had to be great mates.
I'm a recluse and live, you know, in the middle of nowhere, basically, you could say, and rarely get down to Melbourne. But you know, when I do go to the reunion, meet up with them, it's beautiful.
It's one of the great things in football, the friends you make.
You always got a bond with that group of people.
And you really do have a rapport with those players that you have with no one else.
Something you look back on with, well, pride, and sort of think how fortunate I was to be part of it.
I love the footy club. I love St Kilda. I can get very emotional about St Kilda if you keep going down that track. I love it. It just gets me. I don't know why, but I get emotional about it.
You don't know how you're going to be respected at the end of your time, and all I say to the people of today that, yes, you're entitled to make big money out of the game, but you must promise us one thing: you leave our game in such the state that the next generation has the same opportunity as we did.
The Premiership Cup is theirs, and the mighty Flying Hawks add a stimulating chapter to Australian football history.
Excitement still tingles in my body now of captaining a team to a premiership in front of 118,000 at the MCG. The most exciting moment in my life.